What's up, family? That is Maroon Commandos with some. Has to be a Taita song, if I'm not wrong. It has to be Taita or something coastal. The song is called Chiranyo Niwasi. Basically, it's a letter from the village to the people in the city. So it is the person in the city is writing a letter to the people in the village, telling them about how the city life is hard. Namuandikiaga barua. So namuandikiaga barua is I'll be writing you letters. So it is basically a song about that. Not that I understand any Taita or any, I don't even know what it is saying, but from the little translation that I can get, that is Chiranyo Niwasi by Maroon Commandos. Some African jams to lighten up this Saturday afternoon. It's a rather chilly, really chilly afternoon in Nairobi. It's 12:54 p.m. East African time, on the 6th of April 2024. And this is the diary of a young black king. And today I'll be looking at something I really love, something I'm passionate about, a topic that I love. I'll be looking at Africa's stolen artifacts and how most of Africa's ancient art was looted. By who, I'm going to be telling you, and where they sit, I'm also going to be telling you. And we're going to be looking at so many of those pieces of art that are stolen from Africa. And of course, we saw Ethiopia yesterday trying to plead with the UK government to return some of the tablets that it stole. But we are going to be looking at that and much, much more. Of course, we have so many other stolen artifacts, not only from Ethiopia. We have even artifacts that were stolen from Tanzania that I'm going to be telling you about. We had art pieces that were stolen from Nigeria. We had art pieces that were stolen from Benin. We had art pieces that were stolen from Egypt, and especially Egypt. So we're going to be looking at all of those magnificent pieces of art. Why were they stolen, and why are some of them never in display? Some of them were stolen and they're never getting displayed. What is it that they fear that when they display is going to happen? So we are going to be looking at that. And a big shout out to Byron Scott, who's already with me. So we're going to be looking at some of those pieces. We'll look at about 20 of those pieces that were stolen from Africa. And what did they entail? And why are some of them never in display? What has happened to efforts to get these pieces of art back to Africa? We have seen several countries trying to get those pieces back. We saw Nigeria trying to get the pieces back, and it even created a whole commission that was called the Restoration Commission. The Legacy Restoration Trust tried negotiating with the British Museum about the return of, most of these artifacts and arts were stolen from what was called the Nok culture. The Nok culture lived from 1500 BC to about 500 AD in what is now modern day Nigeria. So we have a lot of pieces of art from Nigeria that sit in the British Museum and in many other museums in the world. Nigeria is one of those countries that, back then it wasn't called Nigeria, but modern day Nigeria is one of the country where so many of the artifacts and the pieces of art were stolen from, including the tomb of, we have the neck terracottas that were stolen from Nigeria. We have the Igbo Uku bronze ceremonial staff head. We're going to be looking at those. So it's at some point in 2022, if I'm not wrong, it created what it called the Legacy Restoration Trust. This was a board. This was more of a committee that was tasked with the role of going out and trying to recover some of the art pieces that were stolen from Nigeria. So it tried negotiating with the British Museum, and the British Museum did not give back anything. it said that it was hard for it to know where the pieces came from. But then I tried to look into that, and I looked into the official British Museum website. And an example is there is the Magdala collection that was stolen from Ethiopia. In their website, they say very well that the Magdala, the 80 objects of the Magdala collections are from northern Ethiopia, locality of Magdala, now known as Amba Mariam. So they know where the pieces came from. So them saying that they're not returning the pieces of art because it's hard for them to highlight and to point at the real owner of the art is but a big lie. Because if you don't know the owner of the art, then how come you have identified them in your website? When I look at, for example, the Rosetta Stone that was stolen from Egypt, it was a stone from the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. That is a long time ago, about 196 BC. They are saying they don't know where it came from, and yet they have indicated on their website that the Rosetta Stone is from Egypt. So I saw that as a very weak excuse, not just a weak excuse, but a stupid one, saying that we are not going to return this and this because we are not sure where it came from. So that was a very weak excuse. The second excuse that the British Museum gave was that there was no guarantee that the artifacts will be taken care of in a good manner if they are returned. There was no guarantee that returning the objects once returned will be taken care of. But come on, you took them from Africa. They were being taken care of before you took them. So that is another very weak, stupid excuse that I don't even want to talk about. So those are the two excuses that the Nigerian the Nigerian Return Trust, that was a commission that was formed allegedly to try and bring back some of the artifacts that were stolen from Nigeria. Back then it wasn't called Nigeria, but currently it's called Nigeria. At least the only museum that cooperated with the commission was the Museum of Art in New York, because in June it returned 2 Benin bronze plaques and a 14th century If head. So it returned 3 artifacts. The Museum of Art in New York, that was the only success that the Nigerian Commission had in trying to ask for their artifacts back. The only success they had was they got three arts back to Nigeria, 3 Benin bronze plaques and a 14th century If head. Britain has now decided to adopt a certain measure that they call a policy that they call retain and explain. Listen, retain and explain basically means we know we stole from you, but you're gonna retain it and explain. So that is, if you go, according to the new policy, if you go to the British Museum and you find a piece of art, maybe from Tanzania, because there are pieces of art from Tanzania. There was the old one chopper. That was a old one chopper was some ancient stone tools that were stolen from Old Dubai George in Tanzania. So if you go to the British Museum, they'll have that Tanzanian artifact there, but they're going to explain that we got this artifact from Tanzania. So that is what it means to retain and explain. I steal from you, but I still keep what I stole from you as long as I'm explaining. So that makes me a better thief because I'm giving you credit. In short, it's like somebody stealing your work but giving you credit for it. So that is what the British Museum decided to do. It said it's not returning any art anywhere. It's going to retain and explain state-owned objects. So in short, they're gonna contextualize all the arts. They're gonna put context in them, explain where they got it from and from where it was, but they are not returning anything. That was the third thing that they said. The first thing I said, they gave 3 excuses on why they were not returning Africa's stolen artifacts, because when we talk about the British Museum, then that has to be the biggest thief. I don't think there is another museum in the world that sits with more stolen art. There might be, but I don't know. I don't think there is another museum in the world that sits with more stolen art, stolen pieces than the British Museum. It is basically made up of stolen artifacts. You take out the stolen pieces from the British Museum, it closes down. And Byron Scott says something that I agree with. He's saying one of the reasons that they can't return these pieces is the artwork is worth trillions of money. And that is true, because if you look at, for example, the Great Star of African Diamond, that is, you can call it has a lot of names, but that is the name that it is majorly known for. It is also called the Cullinan diamond. It is the one that is on the Queen's. It is on the Queen's, whatever the Queen wears, the Queen's throne, not the throne, the Queen's scepter. I was looking for the word scepter. It is the one that is on the Queen's scepter. The Cullinan diamond, I was looking at its value. It's the world's biggest diamond. Was it stolen from South Africa? I guess it was stolen from South Africa, if I'm not wrong. The Great Star of Africa was mined in Africa, in South Africa, if I'm not wrong. You can check it for me, Byron Scott. I'm sure you know. I guess it was from South Africa, if I'm not wrong. If you look at its value in the current market of jewelry, then you'll understand why they cannot give it back, because it's worth a lot of money. It is worth billions of dollars. So that is why they are always going to come up with excuses on why they cannot return this, to I don't know to where. So they gave 3 excuses. The first one was that it is hard for us to tell who the owner is. You know, we don't know where we stole this from, so we can't really tell who the owner of this arts are. So I'm keeping it because I don't know who the owner is. The second one that they gave was that the process is not very clear. The process of asking for them is not very clear, and we are not sure that you are going to take good care of things we stole from you. I stole something from you, but I'm not sure whether you are going to take good care of it, so I'm not giving it back to you. That was the second excuse. And the last was the one that I've just told you about. They said we are going to adopt retain and explain policy. You're going to retain your artifacts, you're going to retain your art, you're going to retain whatever we stole from you, as long as we are going to explain. We're going to tell the people that we stole from. We are going to tell the people that we are going to contextualize the art. So that is how, if you look at most of these Western museums, you're just going to find Yoruba artifacts, you're just going to find Ethiopian tablets, you're just going to find Egyptian tombs. Back then it wasn't called Egypt, so I'm just naming them by their current name. You're gonna find Siolun's books. You're gonna find they have nothing. I don't know why they don't have a history. I mean, it's in the West. I'm supposed to see Western history. Why am I learning about Benin bronzes in the UK? What about your history as the UK? Do you have one? I mean, I've never seen our museums displaying their. Don't you have a history of your own? Why do you have to showcase other people's history? Why do I, as a citizen of Nigeria, if I want to see the Benin bronzes that were from my country, have to travel to the UK for me to see things that were originally mine? I have to pay to see things that were my ancestors. So I've never understood how they don't have a culture, they don't have a history, because if they had a history, then they wouldn't have so much pride in showcasing other people's artifacts over their own. One of them being the British Museum is so notorious for this. It is full of stolen artifacts, nothing else. The British Museum is just but a collection of stolen artifacts from all over Africa. So let us start looking at some of the works that have been stolen from Africa. I'm just gonna look at 20 today, but there are hundreds. So I'm gonna look at 20 of the most. It's actually in the thousands, the artifacts that have been stolen. So one of the most popular artifacts that they stole from Africa was the Benin bronzes, and I'm gonna share an image of it so that you can see it. You can see maybe what I'm talking about when I talk about the Benin bronzes. Let me see if I can find an image of the Benin bronzes right away. Yep, I found an image. So those are the Benin bronzes that were stolen from the Benin. This is one of the stolen, one of the artifacts that you're gonna find in the British Museum that is African. It was stolen from the royal palace of the Kingdom of Benin. So the Kingdom of Benin is now what is currently it is the Edo state in Nigeria. It was made up of the Edo people who are now living in Nigeria. They were Benin arts from the 14th century. Look at how beautiful this art is. We're talking about 14th century art from the people. Let me put this on full screen so that you can see how beautiful they look. Talking about art from the 14th century by the Edo people of the Benin, of the Kingdom of Benin. So there are about 1,000 of them. The Benin bronzes are about 1,000 of them. Most of them are in the British Museum as we speak, and others are from the 15th and 16th century, but majority of them are from the 14th century. Most of these were taken by British forces during the British expedition of 1897. That is when British empires were trying to control the current day southern Nigeria. So there was a war because the Nigerians resisted. They did not want to be colonized, of course. So they fought back. And when they were fighting back, the people of Nigeria were fighting back using poisonous arrows. And those poisonous arrows are, by the way, still also on the British Museum. They even took the arrows that the Nigerian people, it was actually a tribe called Chibuk. They even took the arrows that the people of Chibuk were shooting them with and also added that to the British Museum. So most of these were taken during that period when there was a siege, a war that took place, an uprising. That is when the British people were trying to take over southern Nigeria. So there was that town called Chibok, and the Chibok tribesmen fought back using poisonous arrows, and they were later overpowered by the British army. And of course, that is when most of these artifacts were stolen, including the arrows that were used to kill them. So if you want, those arrows are on display in the British Museum alongside about 73,000 other Nigerian artifacts. I'm talking about Nigeria alone. I've not even looked at Ethiopia. I've not even looked at Egypt. I've not even looked at, I guess Egypt. Egypt was then called Kimich, if I'm not wrong. So that is among the other 73,000 African objects, Nigerian objects that were taken during that uprising that took place in Nigeria in 18 in the late 18th century, in the late 18th something, that was in the 19th century. So it was in 1897. So following that war, about 200 pieces of the Benin bronzes were taken to the British Museum in London, while the rest were taken to other European museums. A big number of them is being held by the British Museum, with other collections of the same being in Germany and the United States. That is the Benin bronze that are on your screen. So most of them are in the British Museum, but the United States and Germany also had their share of the same. So they distributed these Benin bronzes, and the ones in the United States were the ones that were returned after the tribunal. I hope you can hear me. It's raining really heavily in Nairobi right now. It's pouring. There's a heavy downpour. So I'm trying to raise my voice because so that you can hear me. So some of those Benin bronzes that were taken to the United States were the one that found their way in the New York Museum of Art. And as I had told you earlier, the only success that you have seen in regards to do with Nigeria and in regards to do with the Legacy Restoration Trust that was set up in 2020 to act as an intermediary to manage negotiations with foreign museums was that the United States did return the Benin bronzes, 3 of them. So that was probably a little percentage of the bronzes that they have, because, as I told you, 1,000 of them were stolen. 200 went into the British Museum, so that leaves about 800 others in circulation. But only 2 are returned to the Nigerians, and so that leaves a lot of other Benin bronzes circulating out there in foreign museums, showcasing Benin culture, showcasing the Edo people culture. That's some weird behavior right there. In as much as maybe they are after the value, the value of the artifacts is high, but still, why do you have so much pride in other people's history and other people's culture? So most of these bronzes are in the British Museum. Others are in Germany. Um, the bronzes depicted several things. If you look at the images, you are going to see they are showing different things. They were not like a uniform piece of art. It was that piece of art that was used to showcase so many things. For example, you're gonna find an a Benin art showcasing. There is even one with a soldier that they carved a soldier in it, not a British soldier. You're going to find others with there was not British soldiers. It is a Portuguese soldier, the 16th century one. You're going to find another one showcasing the royal palace in Benin City. So they use these tablets, these plaques, almost like their cameras. It's how they saw life using. So the Benin City, that was how the people of Benin, the Edo people, had so much pride in this. So they there were so many figures, so many things that they showcased using these plaques. Their history was in this, but now only 2 of them have been returned. That leaves about 998 plaques still out there. If you look at them, they are so beautiful. If you just Google them and look at them, I'm looking at them right now, and they are so, it just shows how kills the whole narrative that African people are illiterate and not intelligent, because I don't see how somebody who's not as intelligent as they make us believe would carve such a piece of art in the 14th century. There's one showing the Benin's palace, the Oba Palace. There's one showing a warrior who's fighting, and the warrior is well equipped with weapons. There is another one that I'm seeing here depicting 3 other Benin warriors. And so it kills the whole idea that these people brought civilization to Africa, because if you are making, art requires intelligence. That is why you're never going to find somebody who makes good art who's stupid. Art goes hand in hand with intelligence, and most people who make good art are very intelligent people. So you cannot convince me that they brought education, they taught us anything, when we have some art like the ones that I'm looking at. I mean, look at this. These are 3 Benin soldiers. This is a 14th century, 3 Benin warriors. This is a 14th century piece of art from the Benin bronzes. This one is in the British Museum right now, sitting there. So this is another one on your screen depicting a warrior or a noble. a 14th century still, a 14th century piece of art sitting in the British Museum. There is another one depicting the Benin's Oba Palace. Look at the palace behind. Tell me how you can build such a palace without having knowledge of mathematics, without having knowledge of architecture, without having knowledge of, you know. So the whole narrative that we were, they call us the dark continent, that we were a dark continent before the 18th, before the 20th, 19th century when they came and conquered us, is, but if you look at it from another eye, is it's an argument that dies as soon as it begins, because once again look at the palace behind. Trying to zoom it in. Look at the palace behind this painting and tell me, does it look like it was made by people who did not have an understanding of mathematics? Look at the pyramids of Giza. Look at the works that was done by the Moors, giving education to the West, and tell me, does it look like those were people who were not educated? Did it look like those were people who needed enlightenment? Did those look like people who are living in a dark continent? It doesn't make sense in whichever way you look at it. So that was one of the pieces of art that was stolen, the Benin bronze. We can look at some other art that was stolen from Africa. So the Benin bronzes were from, I've told you, they were from the modern day Nigeria, from the Edo people of Nigeria. So another interesting piece of art that was stolen from Africa is the Rosetta Stone. So the Rosetta Stone is it's a granodiorite. It's a stone that is inscribed. It is a stone with a lot of writings. It has hieroglyphic in it, that is the very, very ancient forms of writing that used symbols, not really words. Hieroglyphic used to use symbols, so it has that in it. It has another text that is in ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptian, which was not then called Egypt, had other names, because this stone was created in 196 BC. 196 BC, Egypt did not exist. So it has 3 writings. Back then, Egypt was called Kemet, which means black land, by the way. So how Egypt ended up having people who not black is something that I'm trying to learn. So anyway, we're looking at the Rosetta Stone, another interesting piece of art that was stolen from Africa, from Kemet. Let me not call it Egypt, because that would be not being historically factual, because back then it wasn't Egypt, but it is current day Egypt. So it was it was a stone, for lack of a better term, from 196 BC. It was actually during the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt. That is the time of King Ptolemy the Fifth. So it has 3 texts. The top of it has ancient Egyptian. It also has hieroglyphic, and it has demotic scripts at the bottom. It also has ancient Greek in it. So it is a stone that captures a lot of things, especially to do with this historical period, that is the 196 BC, and this period of the King Ptolemy, which are just but historical figures. And let me share a picture of it so that you can see how magnificent it looks. Let me see if I can find a picture of the Rosetta Stone right now so that I can share it with you. Here it is. It looks like this. See if it will open without. It's opening with a lot of stories. I'm just looking for a plain image of it so that you can see how wonderful. It looked like I'll get a better picture of the Rosetta Stones so that you can see the other piece of art that was stolen from Africa. It's currently sitting in, it was sitting in the British Museum. It being one of the many works, so many works were stolen from Kemet, including tombs, including, there is actually a whole tomb from Kemet that is sitting in the British Museum that I'm going to be telling you about. So the Rosetta Stones has inscription in several languages, as I told you. It is just like a 3 feet 9 inch stone. I, as I said, I'm gonna get an image of it, a plain image of it, and they say that it was discovered by in 1799. That was when it was taken by the French people in 1799. Before it was passed down to the British Museum in London as expected. So the inscriptions were composed by the priests of Memphis. So it looks like they went through the stone and tried to understand the writings, because some of them are in Greek, which might be understood even though it's ancient Greek. I'm sure you can get a few things here and there. So they were composed by the priests of Memphis and summarized benefactions conferred by Ptolemy the Fifth, that is in 205 to 180 BC, and were written in the 9th year of his reign in commemoration of his accession to the throne. I want to see a picture of Ptolemy the Fifth. Now, let me see a picture of Ptolemy the Fifth if they have one. I want to see what he looked like. As I had expected, he looked like exactly like I had thought. So here is a picture of Ptolemy the Fifth, whose the Rosetta Stone is majorly his words that have been inscripted in it. So looked like I had thought a black man to me. Might be wrong. You can tell me from in the comments, but Ptolemy the Fifth looks black to me. Maybe I'm wrong. And he ruled at around 180 BC, between 210 BC, 210 BC to 180 BC. So as I was telling you about the Rosetta Stone, but I was curious. I wanted to see what this King Ptolemy the Fifth. He's called King Ptolemy the Fifth Epiphanes. What he looked like. I wanted to see what he really looked like. So they were written during the 9th year of his reign in commemoration of his ascension to the throne. It is inscribed in 2 languages, Egyptian and Greek, and 3 other writing systems, that is hieroglyphic and demotic, and the Greek alphabet. So that is how they were able to translate the Egyptian and hieroglyphic writing so that they could understand it and knew that it was inscriptions from the words of Ptolemy Epiphanes or Ptolemy the Fifth. So that is another African artifact that is sitting in the British Museum, trying to showcase African culture to the people of the UK. I've never understood why I cannot even be able to see art from my own ancestors unless I travel to the UK. That is another interesting piece of art. Here is an image of it. Let me share an image of it that is just plain, so that you can. Njiba Jaba is with me. Welcome, Jiba Jaba. We are looking at some of the stolen artifacts from Africa, and we started with the Benin scripts that was stolen from the Edo people of the Benin Kingdom, that is the current day Nigeria. So this is what the Rosetta Stone looks like. Let me zoom in. Yeah, at the top you can see hieroglyphics because those are just symbols with no wording in it, although they can be translated. Uh, in the bottom, there is another. It is also written in ancient Greek and some other ancient writings. So this was stolen from Kemet, current day Egypt, sitting in the British Museum. Words inscripted in it are words from Ptolemy the Fifth, who is black, darker than I am. Njiba Jaba has told me if you want to know whether they're black, you just need to look at their noses. If their nose has been busted off, that's a black person right there. Ptolemy the Fifth looks black to me, and I wish Keith was with me so that he could confirm this to me. But Ptolemy the Fifth looks black to me. Looks like a black man. Must have been a black king. And so you look at these pieces like these pieces of writing like this, and then you listen to the narrative. Once again, let me talk about this. You look at pieces of writing like this. You're talking about many years ago. We're talking about, I don't know how many years ago, many years ago. We're talking about 196 BC, 196 BC. But you look at works like this, you look at writings like this, then you listen to people telling you that Africa was a dark continent. People did not know how to read, they did not know how to write, they did not know how to read and write. How did they write such texts like this? I want you to show me texts from the West of such, historical pieces like this from the West, and maybe I might listen to your Africa was a dark place. You are the one who brought them education. Then talk about the Moors and how they gave the West education to the West. And funny enough, that is the narrative that most Africans hold, that we were in a dark place. We were just in a period of sleep. We were never stupid like they make us believe. We were never as illiterate, as in the dark as they make us believe. There's a difference between somebody who is in a state of sleep and somebody who's never had the knowledge before. Because how then did they manage to write scripts like this? How then did they manage to create the tablets, the Ethiopian tablets that even the British Museum has never displayed? The Ethiopian tablets have never been on display. I don't know why they hide them. Probably because they are going to raise a lot of questions, but they have never displayed them. If you don't know how to read, then how do you write? We were just from looking at the Benin bronzes, and you saw the palace that were inscripted in those bronzes, by those artists, by those Edo people who are very creative in art. You look at those palaces, you look at those kingdoms, and you wonder how can they have built such kingdoms without knowledge of mathematics? You cannot build, from where I sit, I know you cannot build a structure like that without knowledge of arithmetic, without knowledge of architecture, without knowledge of how things work, without knowledge of building and masonry. So that bursts the bubble. And that, I guess that is one of the reasons why there are pieces of art that have never been on display, because they might raise a lot of questions. So that is the Rosetta Stone from Kemet. Uh, these are the words of Ptolemy the Fifth. Don't know what he was talking about. I wish I could understand. Wish I could find a translated version. I don't know whether Google has. What is written in the Rosetta Stone? There must be something to do with it that we can look at. And I'm saying it was translated in 1803. What does it say? Now it talks about Ptolemy the Fifth, who had asked people to declare and hail that the God who maketh himself manifest, whose deeds, to declare him the God who maketh himself manifest, and whose deeds are beautiful. Wow, I, do, I that looked like a lot of words for 2 lines. So it was translated in 1803, and it what you are saying is reportedly, according to Google, King Ptolemy declaring that all the readers who are gonna read the stone must hail Ptolemy as the God who maketh himself manifest and whose deeds are beautiful. Okay. And a big shout out to General Mosquito, who's also with me. We're looking at the Rosetta Stone that was stolen from Egypt. We're trying to understand we're trying to translate these words that are in the stone. It's a very, very old stone that was stolen from Kemet, current day Egypt. And so just figured out it was Ptolemy telling the people to hail him as the God who manifests himself. That is what they translated and found out from this 196 BC stone. So let us look at another piece of art that was stolen from Africa, and now with the Rosetta Stone, that is an interesting piece, a small stone with three writings in three different languages, and of course, um, sitting in the British Museum. You guessed right. So let us look at another piece of art, the Magdala treasures from Ethiopia. I'll start by sharing an image of it so that you can see what we are talking about when we talk about the Magdala. Yeah, so I found images of it. Another magnificent piece of art that is supposed to be sitting in Ethiopia, but is sitting in the British Museum. Efforts to have these treasures back, none of them has ever borne any fruit. So here is the Magdala treasure. Let me tell you a little bit about it. It was it includes around 80 objects that were obtained from Ethiopian locality of Magdala. It is the Magdala locality is currently called the Amba Mariam region in Ethiopia right now. So it was stolen during a certain battle that happened in Ethiopia between uh, it was obtained during the battle of 18, was it in 18? There was that battle that happened in Ethiopia between, yeah, that was when it was stolen. I'll confirm the correct years, but this right here was a ceremonial chalice. It was used in for spiritual purposes in the Magdala locality by the Magdala people. So this is another piece of art sitting in the British Museum. It was stolen in the 1860s, and let me look at the British Museum's official website and look at how they say the Magdala collection came to be found itself in, because they say they're not going to return the pieces of art, but they're going to use what they call the retain and explain. Let me look at the explanation on this. So it says, how did the object come to the British Museum? In the 1860s, relations between the Britain and Emperor Tawadros II became strained and then deteriorated. Throughout the half of the 19th century, British sought to influence political development in Ethiopia for wider regional strategic aims. Come on. So in 1862, Tawadros sent a request to British authorities for assistance in military training to help support his campaigns. So it's a long story, but basically they're saying the emperor asked for the British people assistance in training their soldiers, and they received the Magdala collection as a gift back from the from Emperor Tawadros II. Okay, so that's the explanation on how the Magdala collection found itself in the British Museum. They are saying it was a gift because they helped the emperor train the soldiers there because they were having some problems. So this is another piece of art sitting in the British Museum, and I don't know why it is even called the British Museum when all it contains are pieces and stolen arts from Africa. If you take out stolen arts from Africa, then the British Museum closes down. So I don't understand the point. The point in. And General Mosquito is asking me, do you understand what those artifacts mean? Uh I don't know which specific one you're referring to, because each and every one of them had a specific meaning. Most of them were for spiritual purposes. Some of them were history, African history inscripted in them, such as the Benin artifacts. The Benin, those ones in Benin were more like the Benin bronzes were like how they would write their history in the bronzes. Whenever they won a battle, they would inscript that in the bronzes. So that is why of their 1,000 Benin bronzes, we're going to find the whole history of the Edo people, from how they lived. They inscripted their women. They carved their women in it. They carved Portuguese soldiers when they tried to invade them. They carved their palaces. Whenever a king died and another one came, they carved him in it. So it was their whole history and culture written in there. The Rosetta Stone, as we saw, was words of Ptolemy. So most of them were real African history inscripted in it. Not really inscripted but carved in it. And most of them are right now worth billions and billions, as billions of dollars, as Byron Scott was talking about. And the next piece of art that we're going to look at is one of those examples, and it is a piece of art, a piece of artifact that really fascinates me. It is the Cullinan diamond. That is the great diamond of Africa, that is in the Queen's what is that thing that the queen wears, the queen's spectre. So that is it was stolen from South Africa, if I'm not wrong. We are going to look at it next. So that is why they are really important artifacts for Africa, because they contain African history. They contain the ways that we used to live. They have. And General Mosquito is telling me some of them have significant scientific meaning. That is why they were stolen, so Europeans could study them. Wow. It does make sense, because they even stole tombs. There's a whole not even one, there are several tombs that were stolen from Kimit that lie in the museums, including the tomb of King Tut from Egypt. It is called the tomb of Tutankhamun. That was the king in Egypt. So it makes sense, General Mosquito, because as I was saying, you look at some of those artifacts, they have never even been displayed. So if the whole point was displaying them, then at least would have them being displayed. An example is the Ethiopian tablets. I gave the example of the Ethiopian tablets, and even the Ethiopian Prime Minister was talking about this yesterday, because they were stolen in the late 18th, and they have never been displayed, as they've never been displayed in the 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 British Museum. And the British Museum gave this as the excuse. So apparently somebody asked, you took Ethiopian tablets, why have you never displayed them? At least you talked about we are going to retain and explain. How have you never displayed them? And the British Museum said that the tablets were too sacred, that even the workers in the museum were scared of touching them. So that is what the British Museum said, that those tablets, that there were 11 Ethiopian tablets that were stolen in the Battle of 1868, the Battle of Magdala. If you remember the Battle of Magdala, that was when they were trying to conquer Ethiopia, and the whole battle ensued. So they were asked, how come you've never displayed the 11 tablets that you stole? And the British Museum said they are too sacred that even the workers do not want to touch them. So it makes so much sense on what General Mosquito is saying, that most of them have scientific meaning and they were stolen so that the Europeans could study them. Because you look at an example of the tomb of King Tut that was stolen from Kimit. He was buried in the valley of the Pharaoh. So there's that valley that they used to bury their kings. That and you look at the history of Kimit, you look at the pyramids of Giza, you look at, which we learned the other day, that also had spiritual scientific significance to it. Looked like it was being used for interdimensional travel, the pyramids of Giza. So it makes a lot of sense when you talk about they have significant meaning, in that they had scientific meaning to it. Looked like they had scientific meaning to it. And Jiba Jaba is also agreeing with you, and he had told me a museum is a record of conquest. So the other point that they may have stolen the artifacts was as a show of might. They won't have artifacts from Cornwall or Swansea. They want to see blood pudding and boiled pot. Who wants to see blood pudding and boiled, boiled, boiled potatoes? And Jiba Jaba tells me about the Great Hope Diamond that is in DC, and was just about to talk about the other one that is in the that is in the in that is in that the Queen wears on her head, that is on the Queen's spectre. That is the Cullinan diamond. They say it is the largest rough diamond ever found, weighing about 3,000 carats. It was stolen from South Africa and named after Thomas Cullinan, who they say is the owner of the mine, which sounds like BS to me. So they say it was put on sale in London, but it was unsold for 2 years, and that is when they say the government bought the piece of the art, and the British king who reigned back then had it cut. So it is also called the Great Star of African Diamond. Let me share an image of it. Let me find an image, a quick image of it. We are done with the Rosetta Stones. We are going to look at 20 of the many stolen artifacts. So let us look at the Rosetta, the Great Star of African Diamond. Here is an image of it. It is in the Queen's scepter, right in the front of it. So this one was stolen from South Africa in the early 1900s, 1905, and it was given to Queen. It was given to Elizabeth II, who then gave it to. It was given by Queen Elizabeth II. It was given by Queen Elizabeth. It was given to Queen Elizabeth II by her grandmother, Queen Mary, in 1953. That is how it has gone down, and it is now part of the Queen's spectre. Wow, I'm looking at I'm looking at it, and I've just noticed something that looks Jibajaba also noticed the same thing. I had just actually finished pulling up a picture of a pineal gland because I wanted to put them side by side so that you can see how it all adds up to what General Mosquito was talking about. Some of them are used for scientific and spiritual purposes. Because is it a coincidence that it was cut? Because it was cut, it wasn't originally like that, it was cut. Is it a coincidence that it was cut in the shape of the pineal gland? The scepter diamond, if you look at it, here it is on your screen. If you look at it, the first thing that comes to your mind is the pineal gland. Is it a coincidence that it was cut in the shape of the pineal gland? And General Mosquito is quick to remind me that I was wrong. It was not just the stone that was stolen. They stole the whole. They stole the whole. They stole the whole crown. The stone was just one of the many pieces that was stolen. And I don't know what you guys think. Why do you think it was cut in the shape of the pineal gland? Why was it cut in the shape of the third eye? And the queen wears the crown, and now the stone is right at the place where the pineal gland is supposed to be. I know she doesn't have one. Probably her pineal gland was calcified. But what do you think? I really want to know what you think about this. Why do you think they cut the stone right? It is being placed at the point where the pineal gland is, because once she puts on the crown, then it is going to be at the place where my pineal gland is, because I have one, unlike her. Because I do not believe in coincidences anymore. I used to be, I would have believed that it was a coincidence, maybe if you brought this up a year ago. But right now, I do not believe in coincidences. I know it was meant to be. They knew what they were doing. And Jiva Java is telling me it was so that they can flex with a third eye that is made up of African diamond, stolen from South Africa. That was the great star of African diamond that now has been permanently placed on the Queen's spectre alongside the whole. I've been told the whole crown is actually stolen. So it is just one part of the many stolen pieces that make up the Queen's crown. And I'm not even surprised, knowing the history of the UK. And I just, out of curiosity, I googled what is the estimated worth of the great stuff diamond, and he told me 400 million US dollars. That is what they estimate its worth to be right now. 400 million US dollars. Wow. And the people of Nigeria were creating a whole I talked about this at the beginning of the show. Let me just go through it for one more time, because of those who are not with me when I was starting. So the people there have been efforts by some African countries to regain their artifacts that were stolen. So several African countries have tried to look for ways to bring back their arts and artifacts. And one of those countries that had so many of their artifact stolen was Nigeria. You talk about the Benin bronzes, you talk about the bronze head of Queen Idia, you talk about the Igbo Uku bronze, you talk about the neck terra. They stole a lot of things from the Nok culture, which is now modern day Nigeria. You I don't think Nigeria is one of those countries. Current day Nigeria, which was the Nok culture back then, is one of those countries that have really, really suffered from this. They have stolen a lot of artifacts and arts from Nigeria. So Nigeria decided to try and get back some of the artifacts. And of course, because they cannot demand for them, they created a commission, and they called it what did they call it? I'm forgetting the name. So they created a commission. When I remember the name, I'm gonna tell you about it. That was supposed to negotiate. So the main aim of the commission was to negotiate the peaceful return. They actually used the word peaceful. They say the main of this. It was created in 2020. They say the main of this negotiation was to negotiate the peaceful return of the artifacts stolen from Nigeria. I had lost my connection for a few moments there, but I'm back. It's really raining here, and same as looks like wherever Sinovia is, it's also raining. It is raining heavily in Nairobi. Has been raining since morning. That is why I had lost my connection for a moment there. But I'm back. So that is what the commission was told by the British Museum. We are gonna retain your artifacts as long as we explain. We're gonna explain and say how we got them. So that is why if you go to their website, you're gonna see a lot of bullshit written down there, a lot of explanations right there, and it is why they cannot return. I understand why they gave those excuses, because if the Great Store of Africa is worth that much, and that is an estimate from Google, so I'm sure it's worth maybe a bit more than that, considering I got that answer from Google, so it is 100% much higher than that. So if it is worth that much, then I understand why they are coming up with all those excuses, and they are not gonna give it back to the African people. And here is the Great Store of Africa before we go to the next artifact that was stolen. Yes, you saw it right. It 100% looks like the pineal gland, and that is why they are wearing it on the queen is wearing it on the forehead so that she can look like she has a third eye. Let me look at the comments real quick before we go to the next artifact. And Jibajaba is saying all their shit is stolen. They didn't go to K's jewelry, and he says he's telling me it was he's telling me about the good luck commission. And Sinovia is saying the Europeans had no right to steal our ancestors' artifacts, regardless. Let me look at the comment. So he's saying the Europeans had no right to steal our ancestors' artifacts, regardless. Good morning to our host, Jiba, General Mosquito, and the chat. Oh, good morning to you, Sinovia. And Jiba Jaba goes on to say, they're talking about the rain. So he's telling me to tell Ruto that we want waterproof internet. So that was the great star of African diamond. Let us look at other artifacts that were stolen from Africa, because so far we've looked at the Rosetta Stone that was stolen from Kimik that contained inscriptions from Ptolemy V. We've looked at the Benin bronzes. We've looked at the Magdala treasures from Ethiopia that was stolen in the 18 during the Magdala War. Then let us now look at the tomb of King Tut. They even stole a whole tomb. Artifacts were not enough. They went ahead and stole the whole tomb of King Tut. Let me put up a picture of it. It sits in the British Museum. The tomb of King Tutankhamun. His full name is Tutankhamun. Let me put up an image of it real quick so that you can see what I'm talking about. And how they stealing plates and tablets was not enough. They went ahead and stole a whole tomb with somebody buried in it. And of course, it had a lot of. It wasn't just a normal tomb. It had a lot of. They used to bury the kings and the pharaohs with a lot of gold and a lot of other things in it. And this is his name was King Tut. This is his grave. I've just shared an image of it. It was stolen from. Let me give you a little bit of context on what happened to the grave of the tomb of King Tut. And if you can also, I also learn a lot from this show, so you can also share with me any knowledge you have on the tomb of King Tutankhamun, who it is known as the tomb. It is called KV62. They call it that. I don't know why. its tomb number, it's KV62. It was the smallest tomb, but it was the most detailed. It was one of there were so many tombs that were buried, that were found, but this one was the smallest, but it was the most detailed. It consists of 4 chambers and an entrance staircase and a corridor. It is smaller and less extensively decorated than other Egyptian royal tombs of its time, but it, however, is the most detailed of all the tombs. So, like other pharaohs, Tutankhamun was buried with a lot of objects and personal possessions, such as they used to be buried with furniture, with clothing, with jewelry. And in although the tomb is not that big, it is packed with a lot of things. They used to bury the pharaohs, pharaohs with furnitures, a lot of jewelries and gold. And the funny part that I read about the tomb of King Tut is that after he was buried in, he was the king at around 1332 to 1323 BC. So once he was buried, this was something I read. Uh, Thieves tried to enter. Robbers entered the tomb twice immediately after the burial, but they never made out with anything. So they entered, but they were not able to steal anything. Why? I do not know. Probably because there were a lot of things outside the physical that used to happen in Kemet, current day Egypt. You know, if you look at the pyramids of Giza, you look at, they used to be so, probably the people of Kemet used to be so advanced, they had knowledge that not even the don't think there is anybody in the contemporary world that have the knowledge that these people used to have, people who used to live there. You look at the pyramids, for example, not just the pyramids of Giza, but the pyramids in general. And to date, not even a single construction company in the world can reconstruct the same, even with all the technology that we have, with all the machinery, the mathematical precision, the arithmetical precision of the pyramids, how they align to those pyramids align to the stars and everything, the mathematical precision. So that is why I believe, and rightly so, that the ancient people of Kemet were among the most advanced people ever. So I'm not surprised when I hear that robbers tried to steal from this tomb twice, but they made out with they broke in. So they found that they broke into it twice, but made out with nothing. But finally, it looks like the people of the British soldiers were able to, because they stole this tomb. It is currently not sitting in Kemet. It is not sitting in current day Africa. The KV62 tomb is not sitting there. It was discovered in 1922 by excavators. When I say discovered, it is for lack of a better word. It was robbed in 1922. And it became the most famous find in the history of Egyptology. I told you that because it had so much. It wasn't the biggest of the tombs, but the details in it had so much details. It had so much frenzy and mystery surrounding it, with the whole. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the curse of King Tut, and a lot of, it came with a lot of sensationalization about it. Not really sensationalism, because I do believe most of those spiritual aspects of ancient day Kemet were true. An example being that the pyramids might have been used for one, as sources of energy, as Tesla did establish and tried to show to the people of the world, with him even building the Tesla's pyramid back in the United States and dying mysteriously. So, one, I do not doubt the spiritual aspect of ancient Egypt, not at all. Kemet, not at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have killed Tesla, because I do believe Tesla might have been killed because he spent most of his years in Egypt, studied the pyramids. One, established that the pyramids were not used as burial sites, because initially people had thought that the pyramids were used as burial sites for the pharaohs, but no, they were not. All the pharaohs were found buried in the valley of the pharaohs. So that did away with the theory that the pyramids were being used as burial grounds. There was not a single mummy that was found in the pyramids. All the pharaohs were buried in the valley of the pharaohs, the valley of the kings. It was called the valley of the kings. That is where all the royal tombs were found. So one, the pyramids were not burial sites. Two, they were not nobody lived in there. They had not been built to, in a way to allow people to live. The people of Kemet were very intelligent people. If they were looking to build places to live, then they would have made it look like that. But there was no evidence that it was made for people to live in. And then you look at the amount of work that was put in building the pyramids, the mathematical precision, the fact that they even carried materials thousands of kilometers. There were materials that were used in building the pyramids that can only be found. I don't remember the name of the marble stones. There was a certain component that was used to build the pyramids that was found many, many kilometers away from the pyramids, meaning people carried the materials for hundreds of kilometers to the pyramids. So, one, they were not used as tombs. Two, nobody lived there. Then why all the struggle to build them, and why the mathematical precision in it, and the arithmetic in it is crazy. So one, you can argue, and rightly so, that they were being used to. Tesla talked about harnessing energy from the ionosphere. He said that there is a lot of free energy. The same way there is solar energy, there is energy from the ionosphere, and he did not stop there. He talked about how this energy did not even need to be transmitted using wires. It could be transmitted, once it is harnessed, it could be received. You could just receive the energy. So what that meant was free energy for the whole of the world. And I saw a crazy twist in Tesla's story, because Tesla was initially financed by Morgan to go study the I'm talking about JP Morgan. I'm talking about Morgan, the Morgan who was involved. Was it JP? It was Morgan. So he was the one who financed him to go to study JP Morgan, to go and study the pyramids for quite some time. And so Tesla dedicated all his time in Egypt studying the pyramids. And you know what? He figured it out. He said that the pyramids were being used to transmit energy alongside other uses. He just did not limit it to that. And so he went back to the United States and shared his findings with Morgan and asked for more financing so that he can be able to transfer what he had learned and try to build a similar structure. And what happened was Morgan cut the financing. That was the first thing that he did, because at that time he was financing other people. So he cut the financing, which I do understand, because I guess he was the one financing Edison, if I'm not wrong. He must be the one that financed Edison. So of course, Morgan being one of the people who are deeply involved in the energy sector, so there is no way he would allow Tesla to come up with this new project that would see free power to everybody, just harnessing it from the ionosphere. That is why when he built the Tesla pyramid, he died, and the Tesla pyramid was destroyed, and all that remains are just but scraps of his work, traces. because most of his work was also destroyed. So they are just traces of his work. That is why nobody has even been able to continue with the work that Tesla did. So one, I do believe the pyramids might have been used to harness energy from the ionosphere. Then there's the other aspect that Keith talks about, that they may have been used for, I don't want to call them multidimensional, interdimensional, but I'm going to call them that for lack of a better name, travel. That it looks like there was travel, interdimensional, multidimensional travel, and it looks like it was with its precision, with its accurateness, with its alignment to certain belts. It might have been used for that. With how, if you measure it, I don't know, if you measure its measurement almost aligned to the measurement of the whole diameter of the earth, that is the equator. How the square base of the pyramid, for instance, is almost, it just misses by 1 millimeter per meter. That is off the true north. It is aligned to the true north. How it is, the pyramids of Giza in this case specifically, are designed to correlate with the relative positions of the three stars, that is of the constellation of Orion. That is the Orion belt. I was talking about the Orion belt. Crazy mathematics for that time. So we're talking about many years ago. Crazy arithmetics, crazy knowledge that I don't even believe exists in this current contemporary world. I don't believe it exists in the contemporary world. So that is why I have no doubt in the spiritual, I'm using spiritual for lack of a better term, in the non-physical aspect of the Egyptian Kemet culture. So when you tell, when I read things like robbers entered the tomb of King Tut and did not escape with anything, then I do not doubt it. Considering how advanced these people are, considering how crazy things used to happen, you know. And let me look at the comments before I go back to talking about the tomb of King Tut, which was stolen. We're talking about it because it was stolen. And Sinovia says their hands should have never touched our ancestors' artifacts. And Jiba Jaba is talking about the curse of King Tut's tomb. And he's saying it was the only intact tomb that was stolen. And not believing in coincidences, then of all the tombs that lies in the valley of the kings, the valley of the pharaohs where it is buried, them taking that specific tomb makes me think deeply into what General Mosquito was saying. Most of these artifacts that they steal, they try to go and look at the scientific aspect of it, try to understand how are these people so spiritual? How did they connect with their pineal gland? How come they used to have interdimensional travel? How come we have pyramids in China, And Jiba Jaba posted a link that I am not seeing. Looks like you posted it when my net was not working. If you could kindly repost it. And he's saying it's about moving stone with no sound. I think you'll like it. The entire channel is about that. And he's saying it has only settled less than an inch. That's fascinating. Yeah, if you look at the precision of the pyramids of Giza, to be specific, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna blow your mind. And you're also going to understand why so many artifacts have been stolen from Egypt. Probably they are just trying to know, because as I said, some of these pieces of art, some of these tablets, some of these stone carvings have, for example, the Rosetta Stone, they have writings in them that That is how those ancient Africans used to write their history. If they went to war, conquered a certain village, they were going to put that on a tablet. If the king got a new wife, they were going to put that on a tablet. That is why there are more than 1,000, an example, more than 1,000 Benin tablets. So I guess one of the reasons they have stolen so much from Kimich, so much from Egypt, is because they are trying to understand how come these people are this intelligent. How come they just cannot understand it. So they're trying to, how come these people had this much arithmetic knowledge in 10,000 BC? In 10,000 BC, how did they know about the Orion constellation in 10,000 BC? And you try to convince African people that the West brought education to Africa. And yet we knew about the Orion constellation, not just knowing about it, knowing its relative position. And when I talk about the relative position of the three stars, this is something that current day current day scientists are trying to figure out. An example, there's going to be a solar eclipse reportedly on 8th, 9th, and 10th, around there. So they're going to carry out an experiment. It's called the Edinburgh experiment. I might be wrong on the spelling. Correct me if I am. It is called the Edinburgh experiment. And the Edinburgh experiment is just trying to, is it called the Edinburgh experiment or the what? It is Edin something. Has to be. I might be wrong on the wording, but you can check it up for me. Eddington. It is Eddington, not Edinburgh. I'm sorry. Eddington experiment, because it's named after some scientist who was called Arthur Eddington. I might still be wrong on the spelling, so you can't correct me, but you get me. So they are carrying out the Eddington experiment to try, and the Eddington experiment is basically trying to identify the relative. So there is the actual position, then the relative position. So what they are going to carry out on 9th and 10th, they are already set up for that. Is try and understand the relative position of, is it the moon? They're gonna try and identify the relative position of it in 2024. With all the equipments, with all the advancement in technology, we're still talking about identifying the relative position of, trying to prove, was it Einstein who had the theory of relativity? So they have been trying to do that since 1919. They're going to do that again this week. Trying to measure the gravitational deflection of starlight passing near the sun. Basically, what I'm telling you is they are going to be studying something that the people of Kimit knew at 10,000 BC without telescopes. As Jiba Jaba is saying, without a single telescope. We're still trying to understand the relative positions of stars. But these people knew the exact relative position of the Orion constellation. Those are the three stars, and they aligned the pyramids to it. This thing blows my mind. How intelligent these people are, how advanced these people are. In 10,000 BC, these people are writing scripts, they were writing down tablets. So I do believe they might have been used for interdimensional travel, because why else would they be aligned with the stars? Of course, maybe you might talk about harnessing energy, which we have established happened, as Tesla tried to prove. And so we have been looking at the tomb of King Tut that was stolen. And even The mathematical precision of the pyramids might blow off my mind for the whole of this show. Let me look at something else. So that was the tomb of King Tut. It was stolen from Egypt. They took it to to where they take everything. They took it to the British Museum, and it is being displayed there, of course, as they try to, as General Mosquito was saying, understand the science behind, even understand, even the little details such as how does a king who was buried in 10,000 BC, how the mummification process, even the mummification is crazy. How do you mummify somebody for 10, since no, King Tut actually reigned in 1332 BC, if I'm not wrong. How do you mummify somebody from that time to 2024? It's crazy when you think about it. It's crazy because they try to make Africa look like it was a dark continent. It really wasn't. A dark continent cannot be able to tell the constellation of. So it was stolen by Howard Carter, who led the excavation process in, as I told you, in November 2022. And that is when they found out that the tomb had been broken before. The door that the team excavated at the base was sealed shut, but the tomb had been broken into twice, about 3,000 years before the discovery. The thieves tried to steal from the tomb immediately after the burial, but they never really made out with anything, adding more mystery to, you know, to it. So they say Egypt retained control of that antiquities, some of them, some of the artifacts, some of the treasures look like they remained in Egypt, but with the amount of treasures that are found in the part of it all still went to the British Museum, like all these artifacts that are our ancestors do. So that is it with the tomb of King Tut. Let us look at another artifact. There are thousands of artifacts. So I'm just gonna look at 20 of the most fascinating artifacts that I saw. The other one was artifact that they stole from the Nok culture. The Nok culture lived from about 1500 CC BC to around 1500 BC to 500 AD, and it is what is called it is they lived in what is modern day Nigeria. As I told you, Nigeria has really seen a lot of their artifacts stolen. So let me start by sharing an image of it. And Jiba Jaba is saying Einstein was a fraud in relation to what I was saying. They're planning to do another experiment, the Eddington experiment, later this week to try and prove that Einstein's theory of relativity was correct, with looking at the relative position of the stars in relation to the sun. Jiba Jaba is not buying that. He's saying Einstein was but a fraud, and he dated and married his cousin. Let me look at that actually. Let's see what they're gonna tell me on that. But here is an image of some of the artifacts. They are called the Nok terracotta. These ones were the Nok terracotta was stolen from the neck. It was called the Nok culture, which I told you is in modern day Nigeria. So let me look for a better image of it because They are gonna blow your mind on how these pieces, these ones were built like pottery. They were stolen in the early 1900s, of course, during the invasion in Ethiopia, in Nigeria. They are currently sitting in the British Museum. So they're saying that there is many people do not know what was the original function of the pieces that I've shared. Some say that they were used to as charms to prevent crop failures, infertilities, and illnesses. So that tells you they had spiritual purposes. So they were used to prevent. They used them as charms. That is what Google was telling me. They were used as charms to prevent crop failure, to cure infertility, and illnesses. Wow. So if you look at them, you're gonna see the details in them. You're gonna see, for example, if you look at the hairstyles, um, you're gonna see so much detail in them. And for pieces that are also from 1500 BC, then it's gonna show you how advanced we were also in terms of art. And this is a different region of Africa now. We are talking about Nigeria, current day Nigeria. And you look at the Nok culture. The Nok culture is current day southern Kaduna state, which is now known for kidnappings. A lot of them. The 289 school children were kidnapped about a month ago, were kidnapped in the southern Kaduna state, the same place where the Nok culture used to live in those past years. So the artifacts were taken to the British Museum in 1928. And as I say, they still don't know what they were being used for, but they agree that they might have been used for religious, spiritual purposes, because allegedly they were being used to cure infertility, of course, to prevent crop diseases. This is another artifact this is another piece of artifact that has a lot of African history in it that is sitting in the British Museum. Why, I don't know. But what I know is that they're never going to return them. Other people still argue that they were used as grave markers, but I doubt that. I doubt that they would want to steal the grave markers that much. But they are very, very detailed. If you look at them, for example, a male figure, let me share a good image of them, a good image that shows them in a not the Google one that is just showing let me show you a male one, and you see how detailed it is. A Nok male figure. Here is an image of a Nok male figure. Look at how detailed it was for 1500 BC. So these ones are still sitting in the British Museum, stolen from Nigeria. This is a female one. This one is looks like a man riding an animal. So I don't know what animals the people of Nok used to ride. Doesn't look like a horse. I don't know what animal they were riding, but shout out to the people of Nok. And that is the modern day Nigeria. These are other artifacts. There's a woman still in the British Museum. This is the current position of the Nok culture. It is in Nigeria, as I told you, in the North Kaduna state. This is where the Nok people used to live in. So that is those are just but some of the few artifacts that fascinated me to do that are in sitting in foreign museums right now. There are more than 100 that I can name off head, but we are not gonna look at each and every one of them because HR the messenger is coming up in a bit with what's the radar. But there is others such as the bronze head of Queen Idia from Benin. Another one that fascinates me. Let me share an image of the head of Queen Idia from that is one of the most detailed pieces of art that you're gonna see. Still from Nigeria, the Kingdom of Benin was the bronze head of Queen Idia is so much detailed that it is going to blow your mind if you've never seen it. And for a piece of art from it is from the Edo people. That is, it is suspected that it was made in the 1504. For such a piece and for those many, it's gonna blow your mind. Let me share an image of the bronze head of. In as much as I did not want to talk about all of them, I have to show you an image of the bronze head of Queen Idia sitting in the British Museum. You guessed right. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Let me zoom out. Look at this for a 15 something piece of art. Look at this and tell me that whoever made this was not somebody who was super intelligent. They don't even make pieces like this in 2024 with all the technology. A 3D printer would not make something as detailed as this, and having it being made by hand. And in Nigeria, because was it in Nigeria? It was in Benin. It was in Nigeria. It is current day Nigeria, if I'm not wrong. They don't even make things like this for 1500s piece of art. This is an African woman with long African hair, dark African skin, beautiful, and I don't know how or whether it is ever going to happen, but we need these artifacts back in Africa. These ones should be on display in Abuja or in Lagos. So Jiba Jaba is telling me he's going to post the link on WhatsApp because YouTube deleted the links, and he's telling me there's still anything that is nailed down, then they'll get a hammer if it is nailed down. There's still anything that isn't nailed down, then they'll get a hammer if it is nailed down. They steal because it's their nature, and I give them too much credit when I say I don't know why they steal. The British didn't even have a toilet in the 1500s. No way they could conceive anything that detailed. And now Jibajaba, they try to convince us that they are the ones who brought civilization to Africa. Show me as let me put this on full screen so that they can hear. Show me an image, something like this from Europe, from the West. Not even in the 1500s, even right now, carved by a hand, somebody's hand, because somebody's hand carved this. It is the bronze head of Queen Idia. That is before you start all the conversation. I'm talking to the people who say that civilization, education, they brought all that to Africa. So this is Idia. Idia was the mother of it was the mother of somebody who was called Oba Esigie. I don't know who Oba Esigie was, but Queen Ildia was a queen, and these works entered Europe after the Benin expedition of 1897. And this is not the only head. There were four of them, four bronze heads. They are sitting in the British Museum. One is sitting in the World Museum in Liverpool. There is one that is sitting in the Nigerian National Museum in Lagos, and the other one is sitting in the Ethnological Museum of Berlin. So of the four bronze heads of Queen Idia, only one sits in Nigeria. I don't even know how it got in Lagos, but there is one in Lagos at least. The other three, one is in London, the British Museum. The other one is in Liverpool, still in the UK. The other one is in Berlin. And so as we come to the end of our show today, we've been looking at uh, Africa's stolen artifacts and how most Africans' ancient art was looted and is sitting in Western museums and Western countries. And of course, we looked at efforts by African politicians and leaders to get them back. Most of them tried to get them back using peaceful methods, negotiations, including Nigeria, which created a whole commission to negotiate for the return. I've seen the same thing with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Idi Abiy is trying to negotiate for the returns of the 11 tablets that were stolen from Ethiopia. So majorly, most of them have been requesting, begging for them to be returned. How successful has that been? Only three pieces of art have been returned, and those ones were returned by the Museum of Art in New York. So that is not gonna work. We should now agree on that. Begging, pleading for the pieces, for the stolen artifacts to come back is not going to work. In fact, the British Museum has made it clear that it's not giving back any piece of art. They are retaining and explaining. They say they have implemented a retain and explain policy. So that is not going to work. So you need to change the approach. This is for African leaders, politicians, Nigerians especially, who have seen quite a lot of artifacts stolen from them, from the ancient Edo people, from the ancient Benin culture. So that is not gonna work. You need to change the approach. Begging for the stolen artifacts will not see them back in Africa. These things cost. These things are worth, like as Byron Scott said, worth trillions. Nobody's gonna give you back artifacts worth trillions. And so I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Those were African stolen artifacts, and this was the diary of a young black king. My name is Dimore, and of course, I'll be here on Monday on the Black Hot Fire News Update at 7. I'll be telling you about all the theatrics that have been happening from today till Monday, all the theatrics, dramas, and fiascos that African politicians, countries, and people are going to serve us from now till Monday. So it is 42 p.m. and Keith is joining me. Dramas and fiascos that African politicians, countries, and people are going to serve us. How are you doing, Keith?
Yeah, I'm too late.
Yeah, I'm just about to close.
Yeah, it's my want to get them, not getting back. They stole those things.
They're not gonna give it back.
You don't get nothing back without power. The more about what they're gonna do, you're begging them, get nothing back. I stole it. You don't got the power to take it back till you acquire power. Then you get back your shit. Africans will get it back when they get back in power. Well, but because I'm not gonna, they never go give it back up to you.
The British Museum was clear that it is not giving back anything.
No, they stole it. I'm not giving you what? You niggas go away. Shut up.
Mm-hmm. And so make sure to join HR the messenger. He is coming up in the next few minutes. With he's hosting I'll be telling you who he's hosting in a bit. So a big shout out to Jiba Jaba who was with me. A big shout out to
I thought he was hosting. I thought he was hosting Joby's daddy.
And before I close, kid, look at this image on your screen. Look at the bronze head of Queen Idia. Look at how detailed, beautiful, precise it is for 1500
I've
piece
already
of.
seen them. I've already seen them before, Demore. All right. And I seen them inside
But
the museum. I
it
seen the
still
real ones.
blows your mind, right?
Huh?
It still blows your mind when you look at it.
Not really. And they don't blow my mind. I seen them up. I
It,
was
it,
like,
it does blow mine. It does blow mine.
why? Because you thought Africans were savages. Do you believe? So,
Yeah,
don't blow.
I mean, for people who say that they brought civilization to Africa,
Yeah,
and for people who
I
did
know
not
they
have,
didn't. So
for
when I
people
see
who
it,
did not have toilets in 1500,
yeah,
they
yeah,
should be having something better than this. But I've never seen something better than this, more
no, you
detailed.
talking about because I'm a savage, Demore, and I'm savage. I can uh, invade a peaceful people.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean I'm better. They invaded peaceful people who were not warmongers and weren't used to that kind of war. So that doesn't make you a better civilization. And then when they took the babies and just taught them, fed them a whole bunch of lies, and then then the last 100 something years, those kids have taught their kids and taught their kids a whole bunch of bullshit. I see them when I was in London years ago when I was at that museum. All that shit there is
Oh,
not.
you saw it in the British Museum.
Yeah, I've been to the British Museum. Shit,
Mhm.
about 25 years ago. Shit, all that shit's in there. All right, but me knowing African history, I wasn't surprised what shit looked like. It's the Africans run Africa. Africa ran the world a long time ago. Africans taught everybody else how to read and write, whether it be the Asians, the Europeans, the Indians, all of them. So all their civilization was built from us, built on our back. So me seeing something, all that did was validate what I've already known. It didn't like say, "Wow, look at that." It just validated what I've already known about the lies that they were telling about African people. So now you got, like I said, you got 150 years of indoctrination that you taught the Africans. The Africans just do what? Have self hate now. That's why African
I,
society doesn't work. They still worship the
I'm not gonna
people.
lie. In as much as I've come to know that African people are intelligent, advanced, I still see some of these things and they blow my mind. When I look at some of these things, they still
They should blow
blow
your
my
mind
mind.
because
When I look at the Benin tablets, they
it
blew
should
my
blow your
mind.
mind. You just now learning your own history. I understand it blows your mind. I get it. It's supposed to because you've been taught that you was a savage, and they came and gave you civilization, which is a lie. It was a lie. And those Benin bronzes
Mhm.
came from a great city. The city of Benin was advanced and beautiful. White people burned it down to the ground. When they burned it down to the ground, they buried it. See,
Mm.
they wanted to bury African history so they can tell lies about you, what they've done now later. Not only did it came from a that those are magnificent, they came from a magnificent city state called the Kingdom of Benin, which was bigger than the Great Wall of China. Their
Was
their
the,
lands were
was
as
it
big.
was it in
Huh?
was it in it was in current day Nigeria, right?
Yeah. It's current day, not Nigeria exactly. Just look up the Benin city walls. You can't find them. What they did in Africa, they burned every city down to the ground, and then they buried them.
Mhm.
They want to make sure that you was a savage. That city was very advanced. Really, that you'd have cities in Africa. You did. It's a Benin City Wall. It's the biggest earthworks that ever existed. Can have the biggest earthworks that ever existed. That's called building the Moray.
Mhm.
Engineers, they don't allow you to build your own roads anymore. These are engineers that built Benin City.
But there still remains of the walls of Benin, so they can't deny that it was there. I'm saying that there remains. There are two remains of the walls that you can see even today.
I don't know none of that remain. Where they remain? They burnt the whole city down to the ground.
They're saying there are two remains somewhere in Nigeria. part of the Athens wall up to 65 feet tall and are still there.
I don't know. I don't believe that. They burned all that shit. Then they
I
buried
do
it.
believe that because fire does not destroy everything, it always
Huh?
leaves behind something. I do believe there might be.
Yeah, but it's not not just that. That was all throughout Africa. You had cities in Kenya.
Mhm,
All they called the Swahili Kingdom, all from Kenya down to Tanzania. That was one kingdom. Down from the Horn of Africa all the way down through Kenya, the coastal part of Kenya, all the way down into Tanzania. That's one empire, all the way over to uh, uh um what they call it? Oh, the island of damn heaven, whatever that island called, I forgot. Whatever. But you had kingdoms there that houses and art. They're living it damn. You had better houses in the Swahili kingdom than you had in Europe at the time. Look up look up Swahili housing for me for a second, Demore. From the
mhm.
13th century. That was in Kenya. You had no housing like that in no fucking Europe.
Yeah, that was before the Portuguese invasion, right?
Yeah. How can they bring you civilization when you've already had it? These are all lies they've told you. But since you don't know where to find your history, they told you, bring me civilization, and my civilization is better than yours. I got better houses than you. I got better food. I got better everything. Sound crazy. But that's the lies they told. Since they stole the African history, Africans just learned the Bible. Hey, take this Bible and make this in your
And
school. Okay. But you don't know yourself. You wasn't no savage. You come from people that created civilization. You're the first people on the planet talking about you got people bringing you civilization. You civilized the world, Demore, the African. Nobody civilized you. You're the first people that knew how to read, how to do mathematics, knew how to do science, knew how to do medicine. How can a savage civilize you? They can't. That's why they stole your shit. Because they're savages. You don't steal from savages. They stole from you. So you had many cities throughout Africa. Oh, I think I lost them. Uh-oh. Hopefully come back so I can end this. I just woke my ass up. Yeah. That's what they did. They buried it so because they wanted to change history because they were coming to Africa to completely dominate it. So they had to bury everything to create lies. See, when the elders would die who knew the cities existed, they could teach the children nonsense for the last 100 years. With the children, they taught all these kids nonsense. Never had any civilizations. Like what? You go back to the kingdoms and from what they call Tanzania to Kenya up into Sudan, the Swahili kingdom was 10 times more advanced than Portugal and England at that time and France at that time. I mean, you had beautiful houses with indoor plumbing. But goddamn, Europe was still shitting in the streets. You know, you're dealing with a whole psychopath. The lies that have been told are psychopathic. And they taught their own children these lies. That's where you get white supremacy from. The white people believe they actually taught people shit. They believe, and then when they find out that they lived in shit and piss and filth, they get mad at you or they censor you on their social media for telling the truth. Europe just pulled itself out of what they call the Dark Ages, but they never. I don't think they ever had any kind of enlightenment. They would have to get. They knew enough to get military power and then go steal shit. They never became civilized. They're still savages. Every society they built from America, Australia, it's all built on savagery. It's savagery. Yeah. The burning of ancient cities, yeah. All throughout Africa, they burned down the ground and buried them because they wanted to make a narrative of Africans being savage. They knew when you conquer people, jibber jabber, the elderly are not going to believe, but they're going to die. I don't give a shit about the elderly. I'm going to get your children. That's why the children were forced to their schools, forced to their churches to learn, to be forced to learn what the white man wanted them to learn. So that's 150 years of indoctrination. So that generation would teach its generation, and that generation teach its generation, on and on and on. Once you get the children would teach their children a lot, and their children would teach their children a lot. Their children, then you got a whole conquered people. That's why you force your enemy's children into your schooling. You know, as Malcolm X said, only a fool will allow his enemy to teach his children. But you have no choice when you're conquered. That's if the more can't come back. You have no choice when you're conquered. You know, and that's the strategy. That's how you know that was the strategy when they met in Berlin, because all the Europeans did it. When they came back in Africa, the French, the British, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Germans, they all did that. They're trying to make sure Africa never would be a docile state for them. That's what they figured it to be. So we got. Uh, I said the more it's gonna make it back, guys. Seems like the internet went off. Make it back in time. Wait them to come on back. Come on back, the more check it out. Sorry guys, sorry guys, give me a second. I'm trying to answer all these damn words from my staff. Let me see here. Got Sheila and Sheila. See, airtime and spikes. The spikes that we're gonna do in the studio. Yeah, that's. Give me a second, guys. I'm trying to answer everybody's damn question while I was asleep. So, so they show up. Um, the spare key. The second guys. Oh, where he's at? I guess so, but they wanted to completely see. They were setting themselves up. Them with a whole psychopath, jibber jabber. They were setting themselves up as the creators of. Not only did they want to dominate, they wanted to create a narrative that they were the creators of civilization. They couldn't do that. They couldn't do that with all the African evidence. Excuse me. They couldn't do that with all the African evidence that existed. So that was going to be viable. So they said, we can destroy it, and then we'll take the children and teach them lies, teach them that we are the creators of everything. White Jesus, all that fake shit. I don't know what the more. I'm gonna wrap this up, guys. I don't know if the more is coming back or not. He's back. He made it back, guys. He's back. I was waiting on him. He's back.
I texted you, you didn't see my
He's back.
text.
I'm about to leave. He's back. Oh, that's Joby.
Are you still sleeping?
I just woke up. I'm just waking up. I was
Yeah, I
sleeping
was
my
also
ass off.
sleeping. I was also sleeping. Then Dimore said the internet is gone.
Yeah, well, it's back now, huh? What's going? You
Yeah,
sleeping too, Joby? Good for you.
yeah. I was
Were you sleeping in
sleeping.
the back room?
Yeah,
That's what's up. You didn't go. You didn't go. You didn't go home yesterday,
I went home. You can say I have different clothes.
huh?
I went home. I came back in the
Okay.
morning. Yeah.
Okay. That's what's up.
Hi, family.
Okay.
I'm not supposed to be
Yeah.
here.
Everybody's leaving anyway. I was talking about to wrap it up. I said I was sure Demore gonna come back because we said good. Because we said good day. I wasn't sure at the end that was gonna come back. I said the end that might not come back today, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm just getting my ass up. I didn't do the show last night, guys, because I fell asleep. Shit, I had to get.
I knew
I do
it.
it. I
Come on,
do it
big
today.
cheese.
I'll do it today. I'll do it today and tomorrow.
Okay. All right. See you guys later then. I think,
All right. Much love,
yeah.
family.